On February 22, 2026, the news broke like a bomb inside every intelligence agency in North America. Nemesio Rubén Oseguera Cervantes, the most wanted drug lord on the planet, the man who had outrun the DEA, the Mexican military, and every task force assembled to hunt him for over a decade, was dead, killed in a joint operation between Mexican security forces and U.S. intelligence in the state of Jalisco. El Mencho was gone. Within hours, the cartel he built erupted. Narco blockades went up across 22 Mexican states simultaneously. Buses were torched in the middle of city streets. National Guard soldiers were ambushed on highways. Guadalajara, the second largest metropolitan area in Mexico, looked like a city under siege. The blockades, the fires, the ambushes, people watching from their windows across Mexico thought this was grief. It was not grief, it was a signal. Because inside the CJNG, 3 extremely dangerous men had been waiting for this exact moment. One commands a private paramilitary army trained by ex-military instructors, a force that once abducted the sons of El Chapo from a restaurant in the middle of Puerto Vallarta. Another built one of the cartel's most powerful drug manufacturing networks, running hidden laboratories across mountains and farmland while quietly controlling the supply chains that feed the entire empire. And the third is a media-savvy cartel celebrity, surrounded by narco corridos, accusations of brutal violence, and a reputation that makes him both feared and hated inside the organization. We're breaking down the Ruthless 3 contenders fighting to become El Mencho's successor, and the violent war that could decide who rules the CJNG next. Contender number 1, Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez. Let us begin with the man whose name appeared first in every intelligence briefing, every news report, every analyst's assessment published in the hours and days following El Mencho's death. The man that Mexican media immediately labeled the de facto second in command of the CJNG. The man the US government has wanted badly enough to place a $5 million cash reward on his capture. His full name is Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez. His aliases are El Pelon, the Bald One, O3, and Tricky Trays. And the reason his name rose to the top of every list the moment El Mencho fell is not only about what he has built or what he commands. It is about who he was born to and what that means inside an organization where blood is the most valuable currency in existence. Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez was born on September 12, 1984, in Santa Ana, California. That one fact, that he was born on American soil, means he holds dual United States-Mexican citizenship, something vanishingly rare among senior CJNG figures, and something that has complicated every legal effort to pursue him across both jurisdictions. But citizenship is almost beside the point when you look at his family tree, because in terms of cartel lineage, Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez may be the single most dynastically connected criminal figure in Mexico today, and that is not a title you come by easily. His mother is Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia. Inside CJNG, she is known as La Jefa, the boss lady, and she is one of the cartel's most powerful financial operators. She is the woman who moves the money, launders the proceeds, keeps the books of one of the highest grossing criminal enterprises in the world. Money laundering at this scale is not a simple operation. It requires banks, shell companies, real estate transactions, import-export businesses, intermediaries spread across multiple countries, and the kind of systemic institutional corruption that can only be maintained through decades of relationship building and leverage. Rosalinda is, by all accounts from researchers and investigators who have studied her operation, extraordinarily good at it. His biological father is Armando Valencia Cornelio, the man they called Maradona. Armando Valencia Cornelio built the Milenio cartel from the ground up, developing the Valencia family's networks in Michoacan into a criminal organization that, at its peak in the late 1990s and early 2000s, moved enormous volumes of cocaine through the Pacific port of Lázaro Cárdenas in coordination with Colombian trafficking networks. He built the port connections, the Colombian partnerships, the infrastructure that would later become the foundation for CJNG's own expansion. He was arrested in 2003. His cartel collapsed, but the infrastructure, the knowledge, and the family networks passed down, including to his son. So Juan Carlos, on one side of his family, is the son of a cartel founder. On the other side, he has one of CJNG's most powerful financial architects for a mother. That combination alone would make him cartel royalty of the highest order, and then the biography gets more consequential still. After Armando's arrest, Rosalinda remarried. The man she married was Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho himself, which makes Juan Carlos El Mencho's stepson, the heir apparent, the prince, the man the internal logic of CJNG's hierarchy points toward instinctively the moment the patriarch is gone. But Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez did not coast on his family name. The U.S. State Department's official file on him describes him as a leader within CJNG who took direct personal responsibility for the manufacturing, transport, and distribution of narcotics, and for organizing crimes of violence. He reportedly managed methamphetamine laboratories inherited from the Valencia family's infrastructure and oversaw shipments of product into the United States. Mexican media have called him the architectural brain behind CJNG's entire synthetic drug strategy. The man who understood early that the future of the cartel's revenue ran not through old-school cocaine routes, but through the industrial-scale production of meth and fentanyl, leveraging the family's port connections to import the chemical precursors the labs needed. But none of this, not the family name, not the drug strategy, not the port connections, is what made Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez the figure he is inside CJNG's hierarchy. What made him is what he built around 2019. He created Grupo Elite, the elite group. And when you understand what Grupo Elite actually is, you understand why Mexico's defense secretary felt compelled to go on national television and publicly confirm its existence. According to an investigation published by Infobae, Grupo Elite functions as the cartel's special forces, not enforcers, not hitmen, not street-level muscle assigned to collect debts or intimidate shopkeepers. Special forces, heavily armed commandos trained by Colombian ex-military instructors, men who came to Mexico with knowledge of jungle warfare, ambush tactics, and improvised explosive device construction, and passed that knowledge to the cartel's most selected recruits. Grupo Elite operates armored vehicles. They carry Barrett .50 caliber rifles, weapons designed to penetrate light armored vehicles from distances exceeding a mile, weapons found in military arsenals rather than civilian gun stores. They deploy IEDs. They conduct operations with military coordination, multiple teams hitting multiple targets simultaneously, communications discipline, predetermined exfiltration routes. And in July 2020, 2 convoy videos produced by Grupo Elite went viral. Dozens of masked men in full military gear, arrayed in convoy formation, chanting loyalty to El Mencho, presenting themselves not as criminals, but as soldiers. The videos were shared millions of times. Mexico's defense secretary confirmed publicly that the videos belonged to CJNG's elite group and named Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez, L03, as its national commander. The Mexican government, on the record, confirming that a cartel lieutenant commands a private paramilitary army. The operations attributed to Grupo Elite across the years of its existence paint a picture of an organization that thinks and acts like a special operations unit rather than a traditional cartel enforcement wing. In August 2016, CJNG commandos walked into the La Liche restaurant in Puerto Vallarta and abducted Jesus Alfredo and Ivan Archivaldo Guzman, the sons of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the heirs of the Sinaloa cartel, the most powerful drug trafficking organization in the world at the time. Mexican authorities identified CJNG as responsible. Juan Carlos is widely suspected of having personally planned and ordered the operation. Consider what that operation required: the intelligence to know where the Guzman sons would be, the operational security to move a team into a tourist city without alerting Sinaloa's own informant networks, and the audacity to execute a kidnapping of 2 men with some of the most powerful criminal protection in Mexico in a public restaurant and get them out alive. The sons were eventually released, but the message sent to the Sinaloa cartel and to every organization watching was unmistakable. In May 2018, 12 gunmen attacked former Jalisco Attorney General Luis Carlos Nájera outside a Guadalajara restaurant, wounding him and injuring bystanders in the crossfire. Later that same day, cartel operatives hijacked and burned buses across the city to block the authorities' response. In 2020, Grupo Elite was linked to the ambush of Mexico City's police chief Omar Garcia Harfuch, hit with .50 caliber rifle fire and grenades in the capital itself. Harfuch survived. 2 of his bodyguards and a bystander did not. CJNG claimed the attack openly. In October 2020, a U.S. federal grand jury indicted Juan Carlos on charges of conspiracy to distribute cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl, and possession of machine guns. The indictment alleged he personally coordinated the shipment of multi-ton loads of methamphetamine to American cities. Arrest warrants exist in both Mexico and the United States. The $5 million reward stands. He has not been caught. Within the narco culture that surrounds CJNG, Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez has become something approaching mythological. Songs celebrate El-03's military exploits. Social media circulates footage of CJNG armored vehicles with the Grupo Elite 03 written across them, men shouting his name alongside El Mencho's. Intelligence sources cited by Columbia One describe him as one of the most disciplined commanders in the organization, a man defined operationally by rapid mobility, the capacity to mount simultaneous attacks across multiple theaters, and the deliberate weaponization of propaganda as a tool of psychological warfare. His own subordinates describe him as volcanic in temperament, with zero tolerance for failure or disloyalty. Rumors from inside the organization suggest he has personally killed men who betrayed him. And yet, for all of this, analysts who study CJNG's internal politics counsel caution about declaring him the inevitable successor. Security expert David Saucedo, speaking to NDTV in the days following El Mencho's death, noted plainly that while Juan Carlos is the de facto second in command of the cartel, he still lacks influence over many of the regional commanders who govern the cartel's vast network across 27 Mexican states. The ability to project military force and the ability to build political consensus inside a large fractious criminal organization are not the same skill. Juan Carlos has demonstrated one with overwhelming consistency. The other has never been tested at this scale, and in the succession battle now unfolding inside CJNG, political consensus may matter more than firepower. At least in the long run, anyone can seize the throne by force. Keeping it requires something else entirely. Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez holds the most legible claim to El Mencho's position: the dynastic blood, the paramilitary force, the cultural mythology, the criminal indictments that confirm his seniority in the U.S. government's own legal record. What he has never been asked to do is govern by negotiation rather than command. Whether the warlord can become a politician, that question may determine the entire succession. Contender number 2, Ricardo Ruiz Velasco. There is a particular species of powerful figure that the 21st century produced that previous centuries could not have imagined because the tools to become it simply did not exist. The propagandist criminal, the man who understands with something approaching genius that in an age of viral video and social media and algorithmically accelerated cultural reach, fear is not only inflicted through violence, it is manufactured through content, it is distributed through platforms, it is amplified through music and aesthetics, and the intoxicating mythology of power made visible. In the entire ecosystem of the Jalisco New Generation cartel, no one understood this more completely, more skillfully, or more dangerously than Ricardo Ruiz Velasco. He was born on September 13, 1984, in the Barrio del Retiro neighborhood of Guadalajara, Jalisco. One day after Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez, the man who may be his greatest rival. Not in California, not in a wealthy family with deep criminal roots going back a generation, in a neighborhood of Guadalajara, in the streets of the city that the CJNG has always considered its home, its logistical nerve center, its irreplaceable crown. There is something important in that contrast with Juan Carlos, who was born on American soil, born into cartel royalty, born with a family name that carried weight before he could walk. Ricardo Ruiz Velasco had none of that. No dynasty, no inheritance, no blood connection to the cartel's founding structures. What he had was the street, and the particular education that the street in Guadalajara provided in the late 1990s and early 2000s. An education in violence, in loyalty, in the mechanics of power at the neighborhood level, and in what it took to survive and rise in an environment where the wrong decision on any given day could be your last. Ricardo gravitated young toward a local gang boss known as Donnie Quintero and began working as a hitman. The nickname he earned in those years, El Tripas, the guts, rendered with visceral literalness, was not given to him by admirers. It was given by people who had watched him work and been left with an impression they could not shake. After Donnie Quintero died, Ricardo found his way to El Mencho. He joined the CJNG, and over the decade that followed, as the cartel transformed from a regional criminal organization into a transnational empire operating across 27 states and multiple continents, Ricardo Ruiz Velasco transformed alongside it, not into a battlefield commander in the style of Juan Carlos, not into a logistics administrator in the style of Audias Flores, but into something the cartel world had never quite seen before. The man who controlled what the outside world believed about the CJNG, and what the inside world celebrated about itself. The U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control sanctioned Ricardo Ruiz Velasco in June 2025 under counterterrorism authorities. Read that designation carefully because the language matters. OFAC describes him as a senior CJNG lieutenant affiliated with the Special Forces Unit, specifically responsible for the cartel's public communications and propaganda. Stop there. The United States government, in a legally binding federal sanctions document, named a cartel lieutenant's propaganda operation as one of the primary reasons for applying the most severe financial penalties in the U.S. government's non-military toolkit. They didn't sanction him only for drug trafficking. They sanctioned him because of the way he has weaponized culture, music, video, mythology, spectacle, in service of CJNG's territorial dominance and recruiting pipeline. That designation tells you more clearly than almost any other single fact in this story how central Ricardo Ruiz Velasco's role is to how the CJNG actually functions in the modern world. He is not a peripheral figure who happens to make videos. He is a senior lieutenant whose propaganda operation was considered significant enough by the United States federal government to warrant the same category of legal response reserved for terrorists. By the mid-2010s, Ricardo had become one of El Mencho's most trusted urban lieutenants, overseeing CJNG operations across Guadalajara and surrounding states. He manages CJNG's presence not just in Jalisco, but in Michoacán and Colima as well, two of the most violently contested and strategically important territories in Mexico's narco-geography. His control of Guadalajara in particular, the city's communications networks, its financial infrastructure, its underground economy, its urban hit squads, gives him a form of structural power that is qualitatively different from Juan Carlos's military power or Audias Flores' territorial control. Ricardo does not just occupy space. Columbia One's analysis describes him as the urban power, controlling Guadalajara's logistical heart. He controls the nervous system of the cartel's most important city, and in any organization, criminal or otherwise, the person who controls the nervous system is the person without whom nothing else works. To understand why that matters so profoundly in the context of a succession battle, you have to understand what Guadalajara actually represents inside CJNG's operational architecture. It is not simply the cartel's hometown, though it is that. It is the city through which the CJNG's money moves, where its financial relationships with the legitimate economy are managed and maintained, where decisions about operations across multiple states are coordinated, and where the communications infrastructure that holds the entire network together is rooted. Losing control of Guadalajara would not just cost a CJNG leader one city. It would unravel the connective tissue that binds the cartel's far-flung territorial holdings into a coherent, functioning organization. Any person who aspires to lead the CJNG after El Mencho must either control Guadalajara or make an arrangement with the man who does. And the man who does is Ricardo Ruiz Velasco. The 2022 Vice magazine investigation remains the most detailed piece of reporting ever done on Ricardo Ruiz Velasco's propaganda operation, and it is worth walking through carefully because it illustrates both the extraordinary sophistication of what he built and the precise way in which that sophistication became a vulnerability. The investigation found that Ricardo organized lavish parties on private ranches, inviting narco-corrido musicians to record music videos on location. Surrounded by armored convoys, men in tactical gear, holding military weapons, horses, gold, luxury vehicles, and every symbol of CJNG's power and wealth arranged to project an image of total invincibility. These were not amateur productions shot on a phone and uploaded to a burner account. These were professionally staged, carefully crafted pieces of content designed to reach the largest possible audience with the most powerful possible emotional impact. His association with the singer Luis R. Conríquez produced the song Las Hazanas del Doble R, The Exploits of El Doble R, which became a viral anthem that spread Ricardo's legend to millions of listeners across Mexico and the Mexican diaspora in the United States. People who had never heard of him before, the song gave him a mythology. Authorities began calling him the YouTuber because he appears in and produces videos showcasing CJNG convoys and training camps. Not just institutional propaganda, but personal brand content centered on himself. He had turned himself into a myth, and myths are powerful. But here's the thing about building your myth on the internet. The internet has metadata. The internet has geolocation, and the internet remembers everything. According to the Vice investigation and leaked military documents, Mexican military investigators used Instagram posts made by Luis R. Conríquez. posts that tagged locations or inadvertently revealed identifying details about the ranch where videos were being filmed, to identify the precise location where Ricardo was operating. His own propaganda, produced for his own glorification, became the intelligence asset that law enforcement used to track him down. This is a detail worth sitting with for a moment, because it captures something essential about the double-edged nature of Ricardo Ruiz Velasco's entire strategic identity. The very quality that made him powerful, his compulsion to be seen, to be celebrated, to be mythologized on the largest possible platform, is the same quality that made him findable. The brand is the weapon. The brand is also the target. In August 2022, Mexican security forces moved to arrest him. They didn't get him. But what happened in Guadalajara in the hours that followed told the entire country exactly how much structural power Ricardo holds in that city. His men unleashed coordinated violence, buses burning in the middle of major roads, blockades going up across arterial streets, armed men carjacking motorists at gunpoint. The second largest metropolitan area in Mexico was paralyzed by chaos. All of this because one lieutenant was almost arrested. That response was not spontaneous. It was organized. It required communications infrastructure, pre-positioned personnel, and the kind of operational coordination that only exists inside a command structure that takes its orders seriously and executes them without hesitation. The August 2022 chaos in Guadalajara was, in its own way, a demonstration of power as deliberate as any of Juan Carlos's convoy videos, a public display of what it cost to come for Ricardo Ruiz Velasco in his own city. His record of violence extends deep and long. U.S. Treasury sanctions and news reports link him directly to the 2012 murder of Venezuelan model Daisy Ferrer and the 2013 assassination of Jalisco's tourism secretary José de Jesus Gallegos, a sitting government official killed in broad daylight, targeted specifically because his death sent a message about the price of interfering with CJNG in Jalisco. These were not accidents of cartel warfare. They were calculated, public killings designed to demonstrate that CJNG, under Ricardo's operational direction, had neither limits nor hesitation when it came to who could be targeted. Public officials, foreign nationals, professionals with no direct connection to cartel operations, anyone who became inconvenient was within reach. The National Counterterrorism Center notes that CJNG killed 15 Mexican police officers in an April 2015 ambush, with some sources attributing operational planning to Ricardo's network. And then there is Valeria Marquez. In May 2025, Valeria Marquez, a social media influencer with a significant public following, and Ricardo Ruiz Velasco's own romantic partner, was shot dead while broadcasting live on social media, on camera, while her audience watched in real time and understood, with mounting horror, exactly what they were seeing. The official U.S. Treasury sanctions document identifies Ricardo Ruiz Velasco as the prime suspect in the femicide of his partner. The international outrage that followed was immediate and significant. Human rights organizations, Mexican civil society groups, foreign governments, and international media all responded to a killing that was not just brutal but deliberately public, staged on a platform designed for visibility, carried out in a manner that seemed almost designed to maximize the horror of the audience. But beyond the outrage, the murder carried a cold and specific internal message to everyone watching CJNG's internal politics, that Ricardo Ruiz Velasco operated under a logic in which no relationship, no intimacy, no personal bond provided any protection from his capacity for violence. If the woman he was closest to could be killed on camera, then everyone in the organization understood what the calculus looked like for anyone who crossed him or became a liability. Some CJNG factions resent his attention-seeking behavior and fear the law enforcement scrutiny it attracts. The femicide of Valeria Marquez may have calcified that resentment into something harder and more durable, a specific documented grievance that rivals within the cartel can point to when they argue that Ricardo's judgment is too erratic, his exposure too extreme, his presence too costly to the organization's operational security. The U.S. sanctions designation in June 2025 froze his American-held assets and made him a formally named, internationally recognized target, placing him in the same legal category as terrorists and weapons proliferators. Yet he remains at large. His control of Guadalajara remains intact. The infrastructure, communications, finances, urban operational cells still runs through him. Columbia One's analysis notes that Ricardo is considered by many analysts to be the second most powerful figure in post-Mencho CJNG, and that his structural position means any successor, whoever ultimately takes the throne, will need his active cooperation to function. You cannot run the CJNG without Guadalajara. Guadalajara is the logistical heart, and Ricardo Ruiz Velasco is Guadalajara. That is not power by blood. It is not power by military force. It is power by indispensability, by having embedded himself so deeply into the machinery of the cartel's most important city that extracting him would require dismantling the machine itself. His rivals can outgun him in the field. They cannot replace what he controls in the city. In the succession battle, now fracturing CJNG's hierarchy, that form of leverage, structural, architectural, deeply embedded, may prove more durable than any paramilitary force, any family tree, or any amount of narco-corrido mythology. The man who controls the nervous system does not need to win the war. He just needs to make sure that whoever does win it cannot function without him. Contender number 3, Audias Flores Silva. The first two men in this story exist in the light. Juan Carlos built a paramilitary force and made sure everyone knew it. Convoy videos, propaganda, the deliberate cultivation of a military legend. Ricardo built a personal brand, a media empire, a narco-corrido mythology that turned him into a celebrity criminal. They are visible. They are mythologized. They are famous. The third contender is almost perfectly the opposite. And if history teaches anything about the nature of power, in criminal organizations, in corporate structures, in governments, it is that the most consequential actor in the room is frequently the one who made sure you didn't notice them. His name is Audias Flores Silva, born November 19, 1980, in Michoacán, the state that has been, for more than a generation, the most violently contested narco territory in all of Mexico, the place where cartels are born, mutate, fracture, and consume each other in cycles that have left entire communities shattered. From that environment, Audias Flores Silva emerged not as a warlord or a brand builder, but as something that every functional criminal organization desperately needs, a genuine operator. A man who builds supply chains and manages them with precision. A man who controls territory not through the spectacular performance of violence, but through the patient, methodical construction of logistical infrastructure that makes his presence indispensable to everyone who depends on it. A man who accumulates power by making himself the node through which too much flows for anyone to afford to remove him. He earned the nickname El Jardinero, the gardener, because of his operational specialty, overseeing clandestine drug laboratories hidden inside properties that, from the outside, look like nothing more than ordinary farms or rural estates. Mountains in Jalisco, valleys in Zacatecas, remote stretches of Nayarit's interior, converted into industrial methamphetamine production facilities, invisible to casual surveillance, invisible to most aerial observation. He grows product the way a farmer grows crops, methodically, at scale, in locations that look unremarkable until you understand what is happening inside them. His other nickname, El Bravo II, signals a different dimension, not the theatrical public brutality of someone who needs you to see his violence, but the controlled, purposeful, economical use of force by someone who deploys it when it serves a strategic function and prefers to avoid it when it doesn't. In April 2021, the United States Treasury's OFAC formally identified Audias Flores Silva as a significant foreign narcotics trafficker under the Kingpin Act. This is one of the most consequential financial designations the U.S. government possesses against international criminals. It freezes every asset held in any institution connected to the American banking system and effectively prohibits any person or entity anywhere in the world that does business in dollars from transacting with the designated individual. The Treasury press release describes him as a CJNG regional commander who controls multiple methamphetamine laboratories in central Jalisco and southern Zacatecas, and who operates clandestine airstrips and tractor-trailer transportation routes for cocaine and other drugs destined for the United States. On the same day, U.S. federal prosecutors unsealed a criminal indictment charging Audias with conspiracy to distribute cocaine and heroin into the United States and using firearms in furtherance of drug trafficking. The U.S. State Department placed him on the Narcotics Rewards Program with a $5 million bounty, the same figure offered for Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez. And here is the detail that more than any other tells you who Audias Flores Silva fundamentally is. He has already served time in a United States federal prison for narcotics trafficking. He was arrested. He was convicted. He was sentenced. He served 5 years. He was released. And then he went straight back to Mexico and back to business, not at a diminished level, not as someone trying to rebuild carefully from scratch, but to a senior command position inside the CJNGG. He looked at a 5-year federal prison sentence, absorbed it, and concluded without apparent hesitation that the calculation still favored continuing exactly what he had been doing before his arrest. That kind of decision, made with that level of clarity after that level of consequence, is not the decision of a man driven by impulse or ego or the need for public recognition. It is the decision of a man playing a game whose time horizon extends far beyond what most people can hold in their heads. To understand Audias Flores Silva's power within CJNG, you have to understand what it means to control Nayarit. A 2020 analysis published by Mexico Violence documented what intelligence analysts had long suspected, that Nayarit had effectively become CJNG-controlled territory, and that Audias Flores Silva was widely considered to be the probable second in command of the entire CJNG organization, with Nayarit serving as his operational base. That assessment, the probable second in command of the entire organization, is one of the most significant characterizations of any individual in the CJNG hierarchy outside of El Mencho himself. Control of Nayarit provides Audias with three distinct and compounding strategic advantages. The first is access to the port of San Blas, a Pacific coastal entry point through which chemical precursors can be imported for domestic lab production and finished drug products exported for international distribution. The second is command over remote mountain regions ideal for clandestine methamphetamine production and opium poppy cultivation. The combination of isolation, difficult terrain, and distance from urban law enforcement creates conditions that industrial-scale drug manufacturing requires. The third is geographic positioning at the precise intersection of Jalisco, Sinaloa, and the Pacific Coast, arguably the most strategically critical corridor in Mexico's narco-geography. Beyond Nayarit, Audias commands territory across Jalisco and Zacatecas. U.S. Treasury sanctions documents specifically note that CJNG cells across Jalisco responsible for supplying fentanyl and methamphetamine to American markets have direct operational ties to Audias Flores Silva's network. His operation is not a battlefield. It is a supply chain, an industrial, precision-organized infrastructure for the production, movement, and distribution of the drugs that generate the revenue on which the entire CJNG empire runs. While Juan Carlos fights to hold and expand territory, and Ricardo manages communications and urban operations, Audias does something neither of them can replicate. He makes sure the product exists, moves, and reaches the markets that generate the money that pays for everything else. He is not the general. He is not the propagandist. He is the supply chain. And without the supply chain, the general has no war to fight, and the propagandist has nothing to celebrate. Reporting from analysts tracking Mexican cartel dynamics indicates that Audias has forged working relationships with factions of the Sinaloa cartel operating in western Mexico, the very organization that CJNG has been fighting bloody territorial wars against in Baja California and Chihuahua. In Nayarit and the broader region, he reportedly brokered specific arrangements with groups including Los Choneques and Los Sinaloas, agreements that reduce conflict along shared trafficking corridors, facilitate the cooperative movement of precursor chemicals through shared ports, and provide CJNG-aligned operations with access to Sinaloa expertise in financial management and cross-border logistics. Building a functional working relationship with a faction of your organization's primary enemy in a region where violence is the default mode of conflict resolution is not something that happens through aggression or spectacle. It happens through patience, credibility, and the ability to make the other side believe the agreement serves their interests as well as yours. His history with the legal system reinforces this picture. In 2016, Mexican authorities arrested Audias for orchestrating the April 2015 ambush on police in Soyatlan, Jalisco. He fought the charges. He was eventually released. He went back to work. The pattern, arrest, legal battle, release, continuation, describes a man who has learned to treat the legal system as a manageable obstacle rather than a terminal threat, who has the resources, the connections, and the patience to navigate it accordingly. Colombia One's analysis of the post-El Mencho succession crisis reached for a specific word to characterize Audias Flores Silva's role, a word that may be the most precise single descriptor available for what he represents in the contest for CJNG's leadership: the balancer. Not necessarily a man who wants the throne for himself, a man whose support can determine who gets it. His strength, according to that analysis, lies in his ability to determine which plazas obey whom, which means the regional commanders and territorial bosses across Nayarit, Jalisco, and Zacatecas take their cues from him. If he throws his weight behind one contender over another, that decision could be the decisive factor in how the succession resolves. He is not just a contender, he is a kingmaker who also happens to be a contender. If Audias were to seek CJNG's top position himself, analysts believe the cartel would undergo a structural transformation, shifting away from El Mencho's absolute vertical command model toward a federated structure. Semi-autonomous regional bosses managing their own territories under loose central coordination. That model trades spectacular centralized violence for something diffuse, distributed, and far harder for law enforcement to map or disrupt. A cartel that is harder to see and therefore harder to fight. Audias Flores Silva generates the fewest headlines, appears in the fewest propaganda videos, and attracts the least external attention of the three. He is also the man who, by every structural and analytical measure available, controls the resources that everyone else needs: the product, the territory, the alliance networks, and the deciding vote on who leads. The flashier contenders would be unwise to forget that. The succession. What happens now? El Mencho's death on February 22, 2026 did not dismantle the CJNG. It removed the one person whose authority inside the organization was absolute, the final arbiter whose word ended disputes, whose approval authorized major operations, whose personal loyalty networks held the entire structure together. According to Global Guardian's reporting, the immediate aftermath brought narco blockades across 22 states, vehicle burnings, and ambushes on National Guard soldiers across the country. Texas Public Radio documented the violence spreading as far as the U.S. border. The coordinated multi-state scale of that response confirmed what every analyst had suspected. The CJNG's operational network remains functional across at least 27 Mexican states. The infrastructure is intact. The personnel are in place. What is missing is the unifying authority. Analysts studying the succession have mapped several scenarios. Rapid succession, one leader imposing himself within weeks, requires either Juan Carlos's dynastic legitimacy and military force or Ricardo's structural leverage over Guadalajara and communications. In unstable balance, no single leader, a de facto leadership council, growing regional autonomy, is the scenario most observers currently consider most probable in the near term. Civil war, open conflict between Juan Carlos's paramilitary forces and Ricardo's urban cells, with rival cartels opportunistically attacking weakened CJNG positions, remains a possibility if mistrust and personal rivalry push past the point that negotiation can contain. And federated restructuring, most likely under Audias Flores Silva's influence, if not his direct leadership, would transform the CJNG into a looser, less legible, and potentially more durable confederation. The Lawfare Institute's analysis of El Mencho's death and the Kingpin strategy paradox makes the underlying dynamics explicit. Removing the leader disrupts the organization. It does not dismantle it. Research on cartel decapitation consistently finds that succession struggles produce violence and fragmentation rather than meaningful long-term reductions in criminal capacity. CJNG's structure, with active presence in 27 states and operations through at least 37 affiliated groups, was built to absorb exactly this kind of disruption. Regional commanders know how to run their territories. The supply chains know how to move product. The financial networks know how to move money. The throne is vacant. The empire continues. 3 men. 3 entirely different architectures of power. Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez, the warlord with royal blood, carries the dynastic claim and the paramilitary force, and his path to the throne is the most direct. It is also the one most likely to be built entirely on violence, and to generate the kind of conflict that tests whether force alone can hold what El Mencho held through a combination of force, loyalty, and 30 years of accumulated authority. Ricardo Ruiz Velasco, the propagandist who owns the city, is structurally indispensable in ways that no military force can simply override, but carries the weight of international sanctions, a widely reported femicide, and the internal resentments that his conspicuous self-promotion has accumulated over years. And Audias Flores Silva, the gardener, controls what both of them need, has spent decades building the kind of quiet, cross-cutting power that isn't visible until the moment it decides to make itself felt. The most analytically probable near-term outcome is an unstable coexistence. Juan Carlos and Ricardo, intense negotiation over the cartel's direction. Audias brokering regional arrangements and playing his kingmaker role with characteristic patience. That equilibrium, built as all equilibria are, on competing interests and mutual suspicion, will hold until it doesn't. until the calculation shifts, until one party decides the cost of continued negotiation exceeds what can be gained by a different kind of move. When that moment comes, and in the history of criminal organizations, it always comes, the succession battle will enter its next chapter. Keep watching this story. The throne of the CJNG is not settled. It is being contested in real time across 27 Mexican states and the global networks that CJNG controls across multiple continents. Whoever ends up sitting in it will shape not just the future of one cartel, but the shape of the drug war in Mexico, in the United States, and across every market the CJNG has spent 15 years building. That story is still being written, and the three men at the center of it are writing it right now.